Hey, it's Rob and welcome to Axel's Garage. Out here with our first video about Barry. And Barry White is our 2005 Suburban Z71. It's the first Z71 Suburban I've ever had. I hear that the ride is a little rougher than a regular Suburban. We'll see. It's nice and clean, but when we were going through some minor checks with it all, we did realize that Barry's fans were not coming on. So 2005 has electric fans. It's a dual electric fan. It runs on a 3-relay system where it uses 3 relays to send either 6 volts low speed or 12 volts to the 2 electric fans that are mounted to the radiator shroud, and they're not coming on at all. I tried, engine temp went up. I tried turning the AC on, which the compressor belt isn't on, but if you hit the AC button in the truck, I think that would activate the circuit to turn the fans on. I'm not sure, but fans aren't coming on, and we're going to try to figure out why they're not coming on. So what we have here is our underhood fuse box, which does not have a fuse or a relay for the cooling fans in it. So I went searching around, and there is this little add-on piece right here under this bracket, and that's where our fuses and relays for the cooling fans are. Now, vehicles without cooling fans won't have this little add-on that's right over next to the fuse box itself. 13mm bolts, and this little bracket comes right off and exposes our little panel. Let me see if I can move the camera and show you what I'm looking at. So here we are right next to the fuse box. This clips in and it gives you your little readout. Cooling fan 1, cooling fan 2, cooling fan 3. We got a 40 amp, and a 10 amp on the fuses. Why there's 3 fuses? I guess 1 for each relay. I don't know. But there is a schematic. They're available online for these. I did look at the schematic. It is kind of confusing. It takes a while to wrap your head around. But it uses 3 relays to send either 6 volts or 12 volts to the cooling fans to get them to work. So here's our fuses. You really can't get to the relays through this little hatch. You can only get to the 40 amp fuses, not the relays. You can get the 1 relay. So this cover is what's got to come off, and I had these covers off 1 or 2 times in the past. I believe they just clip in. It's got 2 little clips in the front here. There we go. Alright, so you can see these 2 little holes hold some plastic clips. That comes off. And now you got access at everything. So these relays here are just standard 4 and 5 pin relays. Looks like this one's been replaced. A lot of people will come in here, and when they pull the relays out, they'll get a lot of green crusties in there. We look pretty clean. Pretty clean on all our terminals. Alright, and then we got a 10 amp fuse. So the first thing we could do is check these fuses. Let me go grab a meter and we'll give them a check. Alright, so one side connected to ground, one side connected to nothing. I'll go to a hot leg, check my meter. I got battery voltage, 1183, so battery is a little low. Had it on a solar charger. I'll go down to the 10 amp fuse, touch one side, 1183, battery voltage, touch the other side, 1184, 83, battery voltage, so that fuse should be good. These little 40 amp fuses have a little cover on them, See if I can get the cover off. I'll pull the fuse out because I can't get the little cover off without breaking it, I don't think. So 1184, 1183. On this one, 1183. So the only other thing we got to do is check this fuse here. And what I'll do is I'll just put it on continuity, check one side of the fuse to the other side of the fuse. This side, that fuse is good. And I'll go this side. These leaves are driving me nuts. That fuse is good. Theoretically, our fuses are good. The relays are all marked on the bottom. Alright, so let's start it up and see if we can figure out what's going on here. It needs to be up to operating temperature to get the fans to turn on anyway. I'm just trying to see how this guy comes out. Christmas tree. Okay, so I got these two clips over here. Pop those out, and you can, oh, and there's one in the back as well. And you can get the top of this fuse box up and expose the bottom, which in here smells clean, looks clean, which is a really great sign because I don't know what the history of this vehicle is, if it's been in New York its whole life, but to be clean down here and doesn't look corrosive at all and no mice, that's a real bonus. But by getting that up and out of the way, you can slide this up and out and check the bottom of this, which the bus bar in here can also be all corroded as well. And this actually looks really good. The wires look new. There's no green and crusties at all on here. So either we got a bad fan motor or we got bad relays, but we'll see. Let's see if we got power. Bring my multimeter back. Let's check my meter. 1183. Let's flip this guy up. There's our main power going in, 1183. Our bus bar has juice everywhere. Okay, this bus bar does not have juice. That's this heavy green wire. And you got the yellow, heavy yellow. Nothing on that one, heavy brown. Nothing on that one. So those are going to be the powers coming out. This is definitely going to have to be the powers coming out. These three heavy wires. Got a green, sort of a different green, and a yellow. Those are heavy going out. Here's your heavy going in. Constant battery voltage, which is supplying power to the whole thing. You got a ground right here, and then these other guys here are going to be to switch to relays. So you got three, and they are probably grounds. So the relays get ground because they have power all the time, so they get ground and it should switch to relays. That's what I'm thinking. So how could I tell if they are ground? I can put this back to my ground. That doesn't have ground. That doesn't have ground. That doesn't have ground. That one's got ground. Yep. So the relays are probably going to give that ground to turn the fans on. So let's get this thing running. Now that we know a basic rundown of how it, of what's supposed to be what, and let's get it up to temp. See if we can turn the AC on to force it and see if anything changes in there. All right, so I'm running without the AC on. Just want to see if any of these relays got grounds. They didn't, and now I just want to see if Any of them have voltage. Alright, that's got voltage going through it. That's got voltage going through it. That's got voltage going through it. So these three have voltage going through them. These three don't. Alright, these are going to be our voltage out. Power coming in on the bus bar. Power going out on that. This relay is power coming in on the bus bar. Power going out on this. And this relay has power going in on the bus bar and power going out on this. So all these relays have everything except for a ground. Right, so the AC's on. It's on recirculation. Like I said, there's no belt on the compressor, so I don't know if that's going to change anything or not. But let's see. We still got power there. Still got power there. Still got power there. I don't have power going out. I don't have power going out. I don't have power going out. All right, let me let this vehicle warm up to operating temperature. This way we can better know whether the fans are supposed to be coming on or not. So after warming the vehicle completely up, I have no fans, and what I have here is, and I'll use a meter as a pointer, I still have, right, when it's warm, the same thing. Nothing here changes. So along these bus bars, I have constant 12-volt power. Okay, don't have any power on the three big ones coming out, and on the trigger wires, I have battery voltage, 12 volts. So I have 12 volts battery voltage here, 12 volt battery voltage there. I got a ground on the ground wire, and nothing else. So looking at a wiring diagram for this fan setup, and I'm going to put one up on the screen. Now you can tell from that wiring diagram, if you pause on it and just try to, it took me a while to study it, but these three wires here that are supposed to trigger the relays, they got 12 volts on them. Now the wiring diagram doesn't say how many volts they're supposed to have, you know, sitting here like this with the vehicle off, key off, engine off, but they have 12 volts. Or battery voltage, I should say. They have battery voltage. These need to go down to ground. They need to get grounded in order for the relay to trip, because this bus bar that's got battery voltage is on the other side of the switch, to two switch terminals, 85 and 86, and all the relays, 85 and 86 are the switch terminals, and you can see that here on this little diagram. Right here, can you see the diagram? Am I on the screen? Yeah, I am on the screen. Okay, so the switch is 85 and 86. So one side needs power, one side needs ground. Right now they both have power, so they're not going to work. So the PCM needs to tell these to go to ground. When this goes to ground, that closes the switch in the relay and sends the juice back out, whether it be out from this one, or this one. So consulting that wiring diagram again, getting a better understanding of how this works. When the PCM says, hey, I need low-speed cooling fans, what it does is it uses this one right here. This green one, it'll pull to ground. When it pulls this green one to ground, through this wire here, which looks kind of greenish, the colors on that diagram, some of them are different. There's no yellow. Yellow is white on the diagram that I put up on the screen. So what'll happen is this will pull to ground, which will trip the switch inside the relay will click, and it'll open up power going from the bus bar, battery voltage from this big battery positive here, the red coming in, into the bus bar, into this sort of olive green looking one. And this is going to go down to the fan number one, whichever fan number one is. I don't know whether it's the left or the right fan, it doesn't matter. Goes down to fan number one. Coming out of fan number one, on the ground side, goes back up to the relay through this guy here, and then trips. Then what'll happen is this relay is not going to get tripped by this one. It's going to get tripped by this one, and then it's going to send power to the other motor. So it's going through one motor and then through the other motor, and that's how they're series, and that's how there's only delivering 6 volts instead of 12 volts, half the voltage, to the two motors running them at low speed. When it calls for high speed, this relay trips through these two, get pulled to ground. This one will get pulled to ground. They'll all get pulled to ground, and they'll send 12 volts directly through this one and 12 volts directly through this one to each motor, and each motor will have 12 volts and they'll spin at high speed, and that's the way it's supposed to work. So now, using that diagram, I don't know what the temperatures are. That's a different story. Matter of fact, I'll look them up and we'll talk about them later in the video. What I have here is nothing changing. So I have nothing on this sort of bluish green, nothing on the yellow, nothing on the olive green. I got a ground, I got a positive, and then I got battery positive on these 3 that should be pulling down to ground. So what do I have? I have a problem is what I have. But it's not here, because nothing is telling these relays to trip. And what I did just to double check myself was I took these 2 relays, which are normal 4-pin relays that are in this vehicle in the main relay box, and I swapped them out. I swapped the starter went here, and the parking light relay went here. I could still start the truck, so that relay is not bad, and the parking lights still work, so I know that relay is not bad, and I had no change in this module here. So good fuses, right? Good relays. We're thinking this one's good. I don't have another 5-pin to check it with, but these 2 don't work, and this one, even though this relay is not working, it's not working because it shouldn't work, because it's not ever getting pulled down to ground. So my relays look good, my fuses are good, the box is good, and the reason why I came here is because most of the time the problem is corrosion on the back side of this in these vehicles, whether it's mice that like to get in here or corrosion that gets in here. This one is in great shape. What I did also do was, you can see on this harness with the zip tie here, and the zip tie here, it almost looks like it might have been messed with. So I unwrapped some of the tape back to the plastic loom, and I just took a look at the wires to make sure that this thing, maybe it was replaced, maybe that's why it looks so good, but it looks like it's the factory one. I just wanted to make sure that something wasn't spliced, and I had a bad splice in here somewhere. So that's where we're at right now. Still no fans, but the relay box looks good. So now where are we at? Well, these relays aren't being commanded on, which isn't going to command the fans on. So we got a problem other than this relay box. I'm gonna go like I'm 95% certain that this is good here. Like I said, I zoned in on this to start with because first thing you check maybe is a fuse, then a relay, and knowing that these vehicles have these problems, that's why we came here. But I have these 3 trigger wires that have battery voltage. Now, like I said, in the wiring schematic, it doesn't say what the wires are supposed to do at rest. But they do have battery voltage, and I know that they need to have ground to activate the relay. So where does it get that from? These go right to the PCM. So do I have a PCM problem? Maybe. I don't have a wire problem though, because these wires are carrying battery voltage. So we know they got to be making it from here to the PCM, because where would they get the battery voltage from? You know, could the PCM be giving it battery voltage instead of ground? If it was messed up, maybe. I don't know, but I'm pretty confident that these wires themselves, the integrity of the wires is good, because they are carrying voltage on them, so they're doing something, so they're connected to something. But the fans aren't turning on. So what tells the vehicle to turn the fan on? The PCM does. What tells the PCM when to turn the fans on, at what temperature to turn the fans on? There's got to be a sensor that controls temperature. So coolant temperature sensor has got to sense the coolant temperature of the engine, tell the computer, hey, I'm getting hot, turn the fans on low, or turn the fans on high. Well, the AC's on, turn the fans on. Well, the AC's, really hammering along, turn the high-speed fans on. Something's got to talk to the computer, and that's the coolant temperature sensor. The thing that confuses me is that coolant temperature sensor potentially also tells the gauge in the dash what the coolant temperature is. So when I looked up a coolant temperature sensor for this application, it only lists one. you know, some vehicles have two. They have one that tells the computer what the temperature is and one that tells the gauge what the temperature is. This one's only got one that I could find. It's only got one on the engine that I could find. And the gauge is working, or it appears to be working, because the engine's getting hot, the gauge is going up, and the fan should be coming on, and it seems to be working. So, what do? You gotta test that coolant temperature sensor as best as you can, and that's what we're gonna do next, using a real simple trick, a paper clip. So, this truck, I can only find one coolant temperature sensor. I unplugged it, it's a 2-wire sensor. Now, a 2-wire sensor usually is reading resistance to ground. So it's screwed into the block is grounded, and it's reading resistance to ground. So you could have an open, there's no resistance, so the sensor goes bad and it's open, or you could have the sensor go bad and it's closed. So depending on how this sensor is set up, if it's a completely open circuit, it could force the fans not to come on, or it can force the fans on all the time. If it's a closed circuit, meaning it's shorted together, those 2 wires, same thing could happen. You don't know, because you don't know which direction or the design of the wiring in the vehicle. It's going to be either one or the other. And then a resistance factor to ground between those 2 wires can also, you know, and that's how usually the gauge works on resistance. So my layman's thought was, I'm going to unplug the sensor, see if the fans come on. All right, so I did that. I unplugged the sensor, no fans. Now you can take that sensor, not the sensor, but the wire end of it, and use just a small paper clip and jump the terminals together. And that's what I did, and guess what happened? Fans came on. When I went back to the relay module, the relay module was now pulling to ground those trigger wires, forcing the fans on. So all we did was bypass the coolant temperature sensor on the vehicle and got the fans to force on. All right, so moving right in, you got your number 1 spark plug right here. So just above it, right here, towards the front of the engine from the number 1 spark plug, is your coolant temperature sensor. So we unplug the 2-wire connector to the sensor. I just snaked it up over here so I could grab it, and I put just a little paper clip. Now, one of those big ones, smallest paper clip you can find, and jumped out the 2 terminals. I don't have them touching ground or anything. They're just sitting there, not touching anything metallic. Okay, and now we're going to trick the computer into thinking that the coolant temperature sensor is closing that circuit, and let's see what happens. All right, so that's it. Order up a coolant temperature sensor, throw it in, and we're fixed. Now, why didn't I go initially for the coolant temperature sensor? Because the gauge worked. So I can't figure out that whole gauge worked, but the coolant temperature sensor was bad where it wouldn't turn the fans on. I don't know. So I'll link the relays, whether it be the 4-pin or the 5-pin, in the description, and I'll also link the coolant temperature sensor. We ordered one on Amazon. We got an AC Delco coming in. I'll throw that in and we'll be able to start driving Barry. I think we're getting tags for Barry tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, Monday. So that should be in sometime today. Maybe I could get it done today or tomorrow. We'll be able to start driving Barry. That's it. That was the first Barry White episode, I guess, other than the intro. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I definitely learned something. And that wiring diagram, you know, screenshot that, because that's a great reference. It just takes a while to wrap your head around it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.